Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you, and we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome again. I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited for this episode. It's something that really I feel very passionately about. And today we're going to be talking about self-care. I don't know what that word, or 2 words, I suppose it is, brings up for you. But for a lot of us, it doesn't bring up good feelings. And this was sparked in me this week because I saw an Instagram post of somebody I adore and love and admire. And she was talking about her experience with self-care and how it feels impossible. And then there was a lot of people that said, yeah, me too. And it's just impossible because I have 5 kids and distance learning, and I'm just not doing it right now, which I understand, right? I definitely understand where they're coming from. And of course, I read it with compassion, and I read it and say, that's not okay with me. It's not okay with me for us moms to call it quits on ourselves. I'm here to punch some holes in the story of self-care. And here's one of the reasons I think that self-care has gone so badly for most of us is I actually think we don't even know what it is. It's like this very unfamiliar concept. We know it's a good thing. We haven't experienced it as a good thing. So we hear self-care, we think, okay, go drink water, Maybe do a gratitude journal, maybe pray every morning, of course, exercise, eat healthy, all the things. So we conceptually know what other people have said self-care is. And I'll just say it again. I actually think some of these things can be self-care, but in most cases for you, they're probably not. At least the way that you're using them. You're using them in a way that says, well, if I do this thing, then I can check it off the box and I'm doing self-care. The intention of actually having it be something that approaches your own well-being with care and attention and love usually is missing. As I mentioned, we just really don't understand what self-care actually is. We haven't experienced it. We haven't experienced the positive impact that self-care has on our lives. And this is fueling the story of why we can't. And even more so, maybe why we don't even really want to that much. I get it. When I was first dipping my toes into the shores of coaching, somebody had the idea of, well, let's do a self-care checklist. And this was something that actually was suggested as, okay, do a self-care checklist. Get 10 items on the list of what you're going to take on and check it off Monday through Friday. What are you going to take on for self-care? And of course, my brain came up with things like I kind of poked at before, like drink more water, get a manicure or pedicure. It was suggested that we do this checklist, 10 items, check every day, or check them off every day. So maybe it looks like exercising every day or drinking water every day. And let's just say that the relationship I had to this list wasn't very good. I was like, I want nothing to do with you. It felt like I was being asked to do one more thing. And in this case, actually 10 more things. So it's very understandable, probably not surprising as you're hearing this, to hear that I didn't do any of it. I didn't want anything to do with a list that just had more for me to take on. My life was full. I have 4 kids and, I have a career, right? And a husband and all those things that are asking for my time. And self-care, the way I was approaching it, did not feel helpful. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I want to also talk about why. Why am I even having this conversation? Why, if it's not working, if we don't know what self-care is, why should we actually re-examine that? And my take on this is that it's not extra credit. This is not like, okay, well, go have your life, and then if you really want to do it well, go do self-care. I think this is baseline, and it's essential. So creating a relationship with yourself in which you care for yourself, in my opinion, is essential. Yes, it's essential because if you're more well-kept, is the word that came to my mind. That sounds kind of funny to me. If you are overflowing with your well-being, if you actually have given to yourself in a way that you have extra to give, which I know right now probably sounds like a little crazy for some of you, but let go with it. Just give me the opportunity to put it out there that this is possible. So let's just picture you are overflowing. You actually feel like, wow, I have something to give. Imagine how that changes your approach to caring for your child, right? So it's easier, I think, a lot for us to focus on what we want to give to our child, but giving to ourselves the same thing, or I'm going to say it, even greater than we would give to our child. If we were willing to give ourselves even more than we give to our child, imagine what that would be like. I mean, I know how incredibly strong you women are. The things that I hear that you do, how hard you work. I was like, and then people try to convince me that it's impossible to do self-care. I was like, no, you're not giving yourself enough credit. And again, I think we're looking at it more of a doing, not as a being. As I was saying, it's essential. This is not an optional, this is an essential kind of thing, and not to be like adding to more to the should category, but just consider that this is the single most thing, I believe, that can shift your experience in your life. It's essential if you want to experience less overwhelm, less anxiety, and more joy and happiness. If we're not willing to give ourselves what we need, how can we expect to have the pleasurable experience is of our own life? I think it's interesting how many of us talk about being convinced about not being able to do self-care. It comes up in ways that when people are explaining to me why they can't or why they won't, it comes out of their mouth as if it's a fact and it's factual. They'll say, you don't understand. If I don't blank, then blank, right? So they put the story, or they have the experience, and they have proof, right? They have reasons to say, well, if I don't get up at 6 o'clock to give my child their meds, then my child could die. Like, I mean, that's kind of an extreme one, but I get it in the sense of like the things that you're asked to do in your life are very real. Here's the shift though, is that you're using those things against you rather than for you. So the fact that you can actually do the things that you have to do to manage your child's care and behavior on all their needs tells me that you have every capacity to use that same deepness to approach your own care. And think about this. How many of you, if you look at how you treat yourself, would never treat your child this way? You're skipping sleep, skipping meals, eating leftover crackers that your child didn't eat for lunch maybe, or not planning for your lunch. Even more so on how you talk to yourself, the conversations that you have in your head, those probably look very different on how you treat yourself than how you would ever treat your child. A point I want to make here is that, yes, there can be some very real and scary consequences if we don't do some of the things that your life requires. And like I said, you're using that against yourself in some cases. And the point here is not to put yourself against your life and what's required, especially to care for your child, but to actually come alongside your life and ask yourself how to create a both and, like shifting it to ask yourself, like, how can I care for my child and myself versus I get to care for my child or myself. Because as we see, these mothers, these warrior mothers, they give so much. And the answer is always their child, which is so beautiful and honorable. And yeah, at certain times, sometimes it's going to require every ounce of our energy and our might to give. And that's totally okay. But consider that if our norm is to actually care for ourselves in a way that our tank's mostly full most of the time, then when those things do come up, when sudden hospitalizations do come up, we're going into that experience more full than less, and we have a lot more to give, right? So we reach bottom where our body and emotional well-being doesn't totally crash and, break down in those circumstances. I hope that you're being inspired to think about self-care in a different way. And I hope also that you're thinking of the obstacles that you have in your own way, right? So what comes up for you when you think about self-care? Is it that you don't know how? Is it that it feels like another thing to do, like I mentioned? Is it that when you do stuff, it actually doesn't feel like it makes any difference? Is it the time question of I don't have enough time, so therefore I can't? And there's going to be a lot more obstacles that come up. And I want you to actually use those obstacles for you. They're the best clues as to what you can get curious about, right? So if the question of time comes up, The opportunity I see for you is to get really curious about, okay, well, interesting. I wonder why I'm relating to time in such a way that there's never enough for me. There's always enough for my son or daughter because they always get what they need, but there's never enough for me. That might lead to even more curiosity, and I hope it does. And really just the power of questioning something versus taking it as fact. Like I pointed earlier, that obstacles look and feel like facts from your perspective. When I put out an idea to somebody, actually I did a little connection group right when quarantine happened, just put it out to my community and said, hey, like I kind of want to still keep connecting. I'm just going to open up this Zoom hour. This is back before when Zoom didn't feel so exhausting. And I'm going to open up the Zoom hour. We're going to have conversations where the pure intention is connection. And of course, we had beautiful connection and all different types of moms came and we talked about what's going on, right? And the question of some of the moms had a harder time getting there than not. Everybody has their own circumstances, of course. But one of the moms in particular, I pushed on her a little bit to challenge because her belief was that she couldn't get there because of the situation she had at home. And the actual situation doesn't really matter at all. It's how she was relating to that situation. She was reporting to me that because I don't remember exactly what we were even talking about. I think it was like reading a book or like doing something for herself. And it was asking that she would set aside some moments of the day for herself. And again, without giving any of the actual circumstances, over here looking at it, I believe that it's 100% possible that she would create something for herself with no judgment, right? Like in the sense of like, not like, oh, well, she could have done it, right? But it's really more like me knowing that her experience of her reality was based on her perception. And when she reported why she couldn't, we rattle off all the reasons why we can't, right? And they feel like facts to us. Reporting the news, it's factual and solid in our mind. But when we start to question that, we recognize, well, it's actually not totally true. Or you just really learn to separate the facts, like the sky is blue, versus the interpretations of our thoughts about the sky, right? So the sky would be far away. Or it would be, I don't know, that's really kind of a weird example, but the distinction between factual things that can be proven in court or, reported on a police report versus how we relate to those things. And I'll give you a clue here. This is where our power is. Our ability to question and get a little curious about how we're relating to something is where we moms and humans shift from being a victim of what's happening in a circumstance to actually being able to have a position of fully responsible, fully able and powerful in order to do something. So I want to do a little exercise here. I think it's kind of fun. I want you to think of something that you currently would like to take on in terms of self-care, but it feels like you might say it feels impossible or there's no way. Even better if you've tried it or if you told yourself that you should, you should do it for some time now. I know I was definitely shoulding myself, telling myself I should do something. When quarantine first happened, my exercise routine totally went out the door because my routine was going to Orange Theory twice a week. And I loved it. And it was great. It was regular. I didn't have any really thoughts about it. I just did it. And then, of course, the gym shut down. I was like, well, that didn't pan out so well. And so, of course, I was like, well, I have all the time in the world now. Not really, because I still had, full-time work and all the kids and then also now a husband at home. Anyhow, so my routine just totally fell out the door, right? And for, I don't know, like months, let's say. And my brain said, you should exercise 7 days a week now because you got plenty of time. You don't have to take your kids to school anymore, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? I never exercised. And I, of course, didn't make myself feel very good about that. I thought I didn't have as many obstacles, but I did have some obstacles because I wasn't doing it. So anyhow, I want you to think of something for yourself that seems really hard or impossible. I was like, why was I telling that story? I think to point out that it took me months actually to get that back online. And it took, really coaching myself through what was actually going on that I wasn't exercising, even though I knew it was really beneficial. And so let's use the example actually of exercising 3 times a week. It might feel like impossible from a logistical standpoint, like you actually don't have childcare or it's raining, I don't know. Or from an energy, like, oh my gosh, like I know I need to, but at the end of the day or the beginning of the day when you don't want to wake up, it just feels like you're already too tired. You can't even, right? So think about all your reasons. Kind of like let them rise up and stew. And now I want you to think about if I came to you and said, you, if I give you $1 million, would you be able to get your body moving 30 minutes 3 times this week? I can imagine you might not be an automatic yes, right? But your brain's all of a sudden thinking, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I can. Maybe it is possible for me. And I feel like for me, when in some, not necessarily applied to this, but in other areas of my life, when I'm like, it's just not possible. I can't do it. When you ask that question, it just flips something different in your brain where instead of fighting against and trying to prove that it's not possible, you shift into like curiosity of like, well, why it might be possible. And then of course, like, conceptually we have this bigger why of like, oh wow, like if we get $1 million, that'd be great. And that sounds great too. And you see what I'm saying here, right? It just really shifts the way that you're looking at it. You also shift your thinking like from your own past obstacles, and it actually, like, you are able to come up with solutions in a different way. And like, again, it's just purely going into curiosity. And that leads me, I want to give you 3 easy steps to starting self-care. And I really say starting because my assertion is that you're probably not actually caring for yourself. I'm trying to be careful here not to say doing self-care because I've pointed to this already. It's not about doing. Self-care is about a relationship. It is about who you're being with yourself. And so the first step of my 3 easy steps is curiosity. I've already pointed to this a couple times. It really starts with questioning yourself, questioning the thoughts that come across your head when it feels hard or it feels impossible or you don't want to, or when you're believing that it won't matter anyhow, right? So when we really take a step back or step forward, if you will, and examine how we're being with ourselves, we notice that there's just a lot of thoughts that are not helping us. They're not serving us in the capacity that we want our brain and our body to actually support our life. So curiosity is going to be your, with the warrior analogy, like it's going to be your your sword. Let's go with that. And I want you to pay special attention. I don't know what that word is. 2 words together, but I don't know which 2 words those are. Pay special attention to judgment. Judgment, in my opinion, is the enemy of self-care. It's an enemy of a lot of things, but you're going to have a lot of thoughts about how you should be able to do something, or if you were more blank, then you could blank, right? If you were more disciplined, then you could eat better. If you were more energetic, then you could move your body. There's going to be a lot of judgment that comes in this space. And one of the practices that really works well for this curiosity judgment piece is to actually write down your thoughts. So we have all these thoughts spinning in our brain all day, every day, and you're pretty used to what you're thinking about, right? You do it every day, right? So you're not used to really stopping and noticing your thoughts. And so early, as I'm working with people, we really try to slow it down. And one way of slowing it down is writing down your thoughts. So even just doing this like one time a day for 5 minutes can be really, really effective, and it can ripple throughout your day. You may go from not noticing anything about curiosity and judgment all day except for that 5 minutes, which is totally okay. But as you practice this, you pick up on the clues of what that judgment looks like and what that curiosity looks like. So getting it down on paper allows you to look at it more objectively and kind of wonder, wow, isn't that interesting? I never knew I was being so harsh on myself. When you see it on paper, it really just helps recognize that it's a thought and that it's optional. The second easy step is kindness. And it's kindness specifically in the way of self-compassion, right? So self-compassion can be, I'm all in. Like self-compassion is like the most beautiful thing. And I find that a lot of us, when we talk about compassion, we're kind of like, huh? I don't know how to do that. Or it just is, it's one of those words that I find that's, everyone knows is a good idea, but actually implementing being compassionate to yourself is, again, kind of like self-care. Like, I don't know how. I've never done that before. And so actually, if you listen to the episode before this, you would have heard Caitlin McCarty talk about compassion, and compassion in a way that's being a little bit more kind to yourself. And so with this kindness, you can ask questions like, what would be the most loving thing I could say for myself right now? What would be the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? What do I need to let myself off the hook for right now? I mean, I could go on and on with these questions, right? In the sense of like, when you step into curiosity with kindness and compassion, it all of a sudden opens up your eyes to see things that you couldn't see before. So compassion looks like being a little bit more kind to yourself. And this is, I would say, a very easy step in starting a self-care practice. And I'm going to say essential. The third step is permission to practice. One of my favorite sayings is, the answer to any how question is practice. And I love it because it's so easy to go back to, I don't know how, especially when we haven't ever done something before. And the answer usually is, I mean, yeah, all of us have ideas of what it might be. And, you know, there's a lot of information out there on what you should do. But all of it comes down to practice, to being willing to try something and then to evaluate if it was helpful, if you might do it again, if it actually accomplished the thing that you were after. And really just, it loops right back up into curiosity and then more kindness, right? Because you can imagine, like, if you try something and it doesn't really feel like it's working, it could be very easy to go back into maybe a little bit of judgment, like, what's wrong with me? Or just lack that kindness with yourself, as if you were maybe exploring something new with your child, right? And so with this permission to practice, you bring this relationship with yourself where it doesn't have to look perfect. I mean, that's the point, right? It does not have to look perfect. It doesn't have to look like the 7 days a week that I was coming up with as far as what I should do for my exercise routine. And in fact, this perfection piece is often the enemy of why we don't even want to try, because it just feels so uncomfortable to not be able to meet our own standard. And so it's about this relationship. This is about relationship and not doing. It's about being with yourself in an entirely new way where you're asking the questions of how can I love myself in a whole new way right now? What is the thing that I would give myself in this moment? And I want to put a little note here to all of you moms who are parenting in extraordinary circumstances. Something to think about is that I want you to use the evidence in your own life that you can already do hard things for you. For example, just by having the child that you have, you are called to do hard things. Whether it's night feedings, managing medication, doing hospital stints, like I'm in this world, so I'm doing this, but I'm also seeing stuff that I'm like, wow, I can't even imagine. These moms are extraordinary. And if you can do that type of digging deep to give in the way that you can, I want you to use that to own the identity of being somebody who is unstoppable. You've been unstoppable for your child, and what I'm asking you is to be unstoppable for yourself. Use this for your advantage. The knowing that you have of how you will show up for your child, all we need to do is that little shift and actually have you point that back at yourself, right? Knowing that you're worthy, that you're valuable, that you deserve this because you're a human being. And back to what I was saying earlier, that it's essential. It's essential so that, yes, so you can keep giving to that children probably, and more importantly, so that you can have an experience of life that is fulfilled, that is not depleted, that is not just filled with overwhelm and anxiety. Of course, it's going to be there, right? But it also is filled with overflowing gratitude and happiness and joy and elation. All the things that actually balance out some of the really hard things we have in our lives. And as we close up, I want to mention I actually do have a resource that I've made specifically for moms with special needs kids. It's called Special Needs Mom Guide to Self-Care. And yeah, there's a couple like doing things on there, like, hey, try this, hey, try that. It's basically a really nice brainstorm of like, hey, maybe take some of this on. But it's specifically designed to have you be more curious with yourself, to be more kind with yourself, and to practice. And even if you take on just one of the things that I put out there on this resource, let that be enough, right? So this is how you can be kind to yourself. Let the smallest thing that you take on count. And I'm going to close with a quote from Henry Ford. This came to mind this week as I was thinking about this a lot. He said, if you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. Right? So I want you to think that I can do self-care. That's all I have for you guys today. I am so glad you were here with me. I mentioned it just in the episode, but remember to go download that resource that I made for you. And it's just super easy. I'll actually have it on a link on the show notes, so you can click right there. It'll be easy to find. And I encourage you again to let me know what you thought about this episode. What thoughts did it stir up for you? What obstacles came up for you? Let's talk about them. I don't want to have this podcast be like a one-way conversation. I welcome and invite conversation back to me. So you can reach me through my website, also noted on the show notes, and on Kara Riska on Instagram. And I would love to have a conversation with you about what this brought up for you, what you're being curious about, how you're being kind to yourself, and how you're practicing self-care. See you guys next time. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.